Welcome to English as a Second Language podcast number 9, Making and Eating Dinner. This is English as a Second Language podcast, episode number 9. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff McQuillan, coming to you from the Center for Educational Development in beautiful Los Angeles, California. In this episode, I'll talk about making and eating dinner. I especially like the eating part. Let's get started. When I get home, I start on dinner right away. I clean off the kitchen counter after putting away the groceries and decide to make pasta. I preheat the oven to 375 to bake the bread and to keep the chicken hot until my wife gets home. I put some water in a pan and turn the burner on high. When the water starts boiling, I put in the pasta and decide to make a salad. Just then, my wife opens the back door and yells, "I'm home." She comes into the kitchen and helps with chopping the tomatoes to add to the sauce. She stirs the sauce until it's done, while I finish tossing the salad. I get out the placemats and napkins to set the table. I also make sure that there is a spoon, knife, fork, and plate for each of us. About 15 minutes later, we sit down at the table in the dining room and talk about our long day. My wife says she'll do the dishes since I cooked, but of course, I help out by drying them. First, I put some of the leftovers in a Tupperware container and some in plastic wrap, and the rest in aluminum foil. Then I dry the pans, plates, glasses, and silverware. In this episode, we are making dinner at the beginning. When I get home, I start on dinner right away. Once again, we have one of those two-word verbs in English. I start on dinner. That means I begin to prepare dinner. So I start on dinner right away. I clean off the kitchen counter after putting away the groceries. The kitchen counter, COUNTER, is the place in your kitchen where you have a long, flat top or board where you can prepare food and you can put things on. It's like a table almost. But usually in a kitchen, you have cabinets or cupboards where you store things, and on top, you have a counter. A counter is a general word that refers to the top of something, usually somewhere where you do something on top of it. In this case, the kitchen counter is where you prepare food. Well, I clean off the kitchen counter after I put away the groceries. The groceries, GROCERIES, plural, are the food that I buy at the market. We sometimes call a supermarket a grocery store, a place where you buy groceries, buy food that you bring home and prepare and eat at home. I decided to make pasta, so I preheat the oven to 375. To preheat, P-R-E-H-E-A-T, really means the same here as to heat. But if you look at the instructions for making food, what we would call the recipe, R-E-C-I-P-E, the recipe for making food, usually it begins, if you are going to be cooking something in the oven, by telling you to preheat the oven. That just means to turn it on so that when you are ready, when it is hot, you can put the food in to cook. P-R-E, means before or to do something before. So I preheat the oven to 375. In other words, 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I preheat it because I want to bake the bread and keep the chicken hot until my wife gets home. To bake, B-A-K-E, is to cook something usually in an oven. So I open the oven door, I put in the bread, I put in the chicken, and then I close the door. My wife is going to be home late, so I want to keep the chicken hot. I want to make sure that it stays hot. I put some water in a pan. A pan is what you use to cook something in. So I put some water in a pan and I turned the burner on high. The burner, B-U-R-N-E-R, is on top of what we would call your stove, S-T-O-V-E. Your burners are for cooking food where you have the heat comes from the bottom and you put the pan on top of the heat. So if you are going to boil some water, make the water hot, you would put it in the pan and then put it on top of a burner. And the burner is part of your stove. Usually stoves and ovens are one machine, one single piece in many American kitchens. In my kitchen, the stove is on top of the oven. I am going to boil some water. To boil, B-O-I-L, means to make the water very hot until you start to see bubbles. The average temperature is 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius in order to boil water. Well, when the water starts boiling, when it starts to make bubbles because it is very hot, I put in the pasta. I take the pasta noodles, N-O-O-D-L-E-S, the little pieces of pasta, we call those noodles, and I put them into the boiling water so they can cook. Then I decide I want to make a salad because I'm very hungry. Well, just as I decide to make the salad, just then, my wife opens the back door. Just then, that expression means at that time, at that same time. My wife opens the back door, the door to the house in the back. The opposite would be the front door. She yells, "I'm home." That's what you would say when you come home to someone who is already there. You would say, "I'm home." You wouldn't say, "I've arrived," or "I'm here." You would say, "I'm home." My wife comes into the kitchen and helps me chop the tomatoes. To chop, C-H-O-P, means to cut something into small pieces. We chop tomatoes, we make them into smaller pieces, and we add them to the pasta sauce. That's the red liquid that we're going to put over the pasta. My wife stirs the sauce until it's done. To stir, S-T-I-R, when you are cooking, means to take a spoon and put it into the pan and move the spoon back and forth so that you are mixing what is in the pan. So my wife is stirring the sauce, the pasta sauce, the tomato sauce, until it's done, until it is ready, until it is cooked. While I finish tossing the salad. So she is stirring the sauce, and at the same time, I am finishing the salad, and I finish by tossing it. To toss, T-O-S-S, a salad, means to mix the salad together. In a salad, you often have lettuce and maybe tomatoes, other food, other vegetables, and you want to mix them together. Often you put in a salad dressing, D-R-E-S-S-I-N-G. Salad dressing is a liquid, often made from some oil, that gives a better taste to your salad. So you toss the salad in order to mix everything up. That verb to toss can also mean to throw. Usually to throw something to someone else. Someone may say, "Toss me that pen." They mean, "Throw me that pen." Well, I am tossing the salad here, mixing it up. I get out the placemats and napkins to set the table. The place, P-L-A-C-E, mats, M-A-T-S, are things that you put underneath the plate and the spoon, fork, and knife so that the table doesn't get dirty. We call those placemats. They can be plastic. They can be made out of cloth. And they are used to protect your table. So I get out the placemats and the napkins to set the table. A napkin, N-A-P-K-I-N, is like a little towel that you use in case you need to wipe your face while you are eating. You can use your napkin. And it's common in American restaurants and in houses for people to put the napkin on their legs while they are sitting, on the top of their legs, which we would call the lap. On your lap, L-A-P, you put the napkin while you are eating. To set, S-E-T, the table, means to put all of the things that you need on the table: plates, spoons, knives, forks, and so forth. That is to set the table, to make the table ready so you can eat. About 15 minutes after I set the table, my wife and I sit at the table, we sit down at the table in the dining room and talk about our long day. The dining room, D-I-N-I-N-G, is the place where you eat. To dine as a verb, D-I-N-E, means to eat. So the dining room is the room in your house where you eat your meals. My wife and I talk about our long day, meaning we had many things happen today, and maybe we are very tired, so we had a long day. My wife says that she'll do the dishes. To do the dishes means the same as to wash the dishes. My wife offers to do the dishes because I cooked. But of course, since I am a wonderful husband, I help out by drying the dishes. To help out means the same here as to help, but if we are talking about helping another person do something, maybe something that we don't have to do, but we want to be nice, we would say we help them out. So I help my wife out by drying the dishes. First, I have to put some of the leftovers in a Tupperware container. Leftovers, leftovers, all one word, is extra food, food that you did not eat at the end of your dinner, at the end of your meal. If you want to keep some of that food, we call it leftovers. And in this case, I'm going to put the leftovers into a small plastic box that has a top on it. We call that kind of little box a container, container. We usually refer to these plastic boxes that we put food in as Tupperware containers. Tupperware, capital Tupperware, is actually a company that makes these small plastic containers for food. Even if you don't have a container made by that company, many people just call it my Tupperware, the Tupperware containers. That means the plastic boxes that you can put food into. Well, some of the food I put in a plastic wrap. A plastic wrap, WRAP, is a thin, clear piece of plastic that I put food into, and we call it a wrap, WRAP, because we put it around something. To wrap something is to put something around it, usually to keep it cold or to keep it warm or to keep it fresh when we are talking about food. We use that same word wrap for putting paper around a present or a gift that you are giving someone. The paper is called wrapping paper. You can also put food in aluminum foil. Aluminum, ALUMINUM, is a kind of metal. It's usually a silver color. Foil, FOIL, is like a plastic wrap, but it's made from aluminum. It's like a long, flat sheet that you can put around something to keep the food in your refrigerator or in your freezer, where you have even colder temperatures. At the end of the story, I dry the pans, the plates, the glasses, and the silverware. The silverware, remember, is the spoon, knife, fork that you use when you eat. Now let's listen to the story, this time at a regular speed. When I get home, I start on dinner right away. I clean off the kitchen counter after putting away the groceries and decide to make pasta. I preheat the oven to 375 to bake the bread and to keep the chicken hot until my wife gets home. I put some water in a pan and turn the burner on high. When the water starts boiling, I put in the pasta and decide to make a salad. Just then, my wife opens the back door and yells, "I'm home." She comes into the kitchen and helps with chopping the tomatoes to add to the sauce. She stirs the sauce until it's done while I finish tossing the salad. I get out the placemats and napkins to set the table. I also make sure that there is a spoon, knife, fork, and plate for each of us. About 15 minutes later, we sit down at the table in the dining room and talk about our long day. My wife says she'll do the dishes since I cooked, but of course I help out by drying them. First, I put some of the leftovers in a Tupperware container and some in plastic wrap and the rest in aluminum foil. Then I dry the pans, plates, glasses, and silverware. Her scripts are more satisfying than any good meal. I speak, of course, of the work of our scriptwriter, Dr. Lucy Say. From Los Angeles, California, I'm Jeff McQuillan. Thank you for listening. Come back and listen to us again, right here on ESL Podcast. English as a Second Language podcast is written and produced by Dr. Lucy Say, hosted by Dr. Jeff McQuillan.